Welcome to Lunch with Tech Leaders, where we have engaging conversations about software development and cloud engineering with industry leaders and subject matter experts. These episodes are created by the Great Lakes Tech Leaders, an online community of technology practitioners. Please come join the conversation by visiting gltl.rbn.ai. Again, that's gltl.rbn.ai. Now strap in, because we're deploying to production in 3, 2, 1.
Lunch with Tech Leaders. Today, we will be talking about GitHub's incident response strategy. My name is Kyle Robertson. I am a software engineer at GitHub. I've been there for almost 2 years, and I work on our internal tooling for managing the incident lifecycle from declaring an incident to learning after an incident.
Yeah, and hi, I'm Travis Walker. I'm the principal architect at RightBrain Networks, and I've worked in a lot of different roles in QA and DevOps and cloud engineering, both in contributor and management roles.
Cool. Good stuff. So I kind of tried to make sort of like my talking points of what I want to talk about. I don't want it just to be the me show, so interject if you have questions, Travis, or if you want to talk about something specific. But sort of the 4 points I want to talk about are just overall, what is an incident to start with, why it's important to have a managed incident response, sort of the life cycle of an incident and how we kind of go through each of the steps in an incident and after an incident, and then learning from incidents after they've been resolved. So let's start with what an incident is. The way I would define it is an unexpected event that disrupts or reduces the quality of provided service. So for example, let's say I have a service that returns a list of GitHub users. The database is overloaded and is not accepting connections, and I can't get a list of users anymore. And that service is important for other people to use. At that point, I could declare an incident because the service I own is not giving the quality of service expected. And with an incident, you want to be able to mitigate it as quickly as possible because people are, generally relying on your services to do their job or for anything else. And if you don't really have like a managed incident response, it kind of just becomes chaos. You have multiple people doing different things with no coordination. Maybe people aren't doing anything. So it's really important to have some kind of managed process with clear people involved and clear procedures, so that people aren't stepping on their other people's toes, and there's a clear path forward to mitigation so that service quality can be brought back as quickly as possible for customers. So kind of looking at the life cycle of an incident, I've kind of separated it into a couple steps. So it starts with impact starting. And, that could be anything from like, oh, I can't access the website, to like, my service is throwing a bunch of errors, it is running slow. So, but at some point, an impact starts. And then after that, it is detected. Ideally, it's detected, as soon as it happens. That's not always the case. And detection can take a few forms. So, for example, at GitHub, there's a couple ways that incidents or impact can be detected. So first, with our observability services, having monitors that are like checking, error rate and other metrics, those can trigger, and that will page somebody, usually a first responder or somebody on call. The other methods are, we have some internal services that will kind of look at deployments, recent deployments, and kind of correlate, hey, are there a bunch of new exceptions showing up, and can like correlate it to specific changes. And then, unfortunately, sometimes it's down to either like internal people saying, hey, something looks wrong here, or in worst case, customers saying, hey, something's not working here. And that's ultimately a not ideal scenario, but that is something that does happen. So sort of after detection, however it was detected, somebody will look at it and determine whether they want to declare an incident or not. And we categorize incidents in 2 ways. We have internal incidents and external incidents. Internal meaning that the impact is only seen internal to us. External meaning it is customer facing. So like if GitHub.com was down or something like that. We have tools, and the team I work on works on the tools to manage the lifecycle on an incident. So it will allow you to declare incidents, and it will automatically set up collaboration tools and page the right people into the call. And there's a couple of roles that we page automatically. We have something called an incident commander. And an incident commander's role in an incident is to help drive the incident forward. They may not necessarily be somebody that's like actually hands on keyboard fixing things, but they're sort of like managing the other people that are actively working on the incident, making sure that there's continuous drive forward, along with making sure that communication is being delivered continuously to both our internal and external stakeholders. We have the first responder, and that's usually the person that's on call for the service. It can detect the incident first through like a monitor or a page, and they're usually the person that creates the incident. And they might necessarily be the ones hands on keyboard fixing things. But there'll be somebody that can get like a subject matter expert on the call to help. We have a communications lead, and the communications lead helps sort of coordinate comms. Incident commander can sometimes be a communication lead, but if it's something where there's a lot of things going on, generally we'll dedicate one person to being a communications lead, so they can focus on that while the incident commander focuses on driving the incident forward. And then the last role we have is an operations lead, and this is somebody who is the one responsible ultimately if we need to make a change. They're the one executing that. There's probably going to be other engineers and SMEs supporting them, but to prevent changes sort of like overlapping or people stepping on others' toes, we have one person that generally is the one to push the deploy button or something like that. So incident commander, for example, is paged when we declare a new incident, and they'll work with the first responder to get the right people on the call and understand what's going on.
So, okay, you see your incident commander role, and then you have an operations commander. So would your incident commander, like, how much authority did they carry for technical decisions? Did they have the ability to kind of veto, what the operations people want to do or the technical folks want to do? Or like, is that just all done in collaboration, or how does that work?
That's a good question. Yeah. So generally they'll consult with the operations lead, but ultimately incident commanders do have the final say. So if they fear that a change is too risky, they might say, hey, like, maybe we should do this. We should take a different path. From what I've seen in incidents, generally the incident commander will sort of take what an operations lead recommends, because incident commanders always aren't like knowledgeable on the incident that or the service that's impacted. So they would want to consult with somebody who knows the service to make decisions.
Yeah, that answers that, Kyle.
Cool. So when an incident is declared, our goals sort of are mitigating as quickly as possible and communicating frequently so customers understand what's going on. So generally when an incident commander is sort of pushing things forward, they'll be pushing for mitigation, not necessarily like, let's re-architect or fix the thing, just because we're ultimately, customers can't do their job. So we want to make sure that, we restore quickly so life can continue as normal for our customers. And generally, we also have tools so when an incident commander joins the call of a first responder, they'll generally do some information gathering, and we have collaboration tools to help with like keeping notes and things like that. And from there, an incident commander will, say, hey, maybe we need to page this person, or hey, can we roll back a change? Generally, we try to do the simplest thing first, whether it's like if a new deploy happens and we notice new exceptions, can we just roll back that deployment? Or, hey, a feature flag was flipped and now we're seeing this impact, can we just flip it back? Ideally, those are kind of the things we can do first, but sometimes that's not the case. So other people might need to be paged in to help. We also try to communicate frequently. We have sort of reminders in our tooling to say like, hey, it's been 30 minutes since you posted a public update. If it's a public incident, for example, you should probably post an update. And generally we're just trying to make sure that like we're giving continuous, meaningful updates, so that our customers understand what's going on. There are times that we may not post an update for a little bit longer than 30 minutes just because we're at the same sort of state. And like, we don't want to like flood people with like the same update over and over again because it's not really helpful.
Yeah, I found with communication, it's I mean, even though like frequent updates could kind of seem redundant. I mean, over communication is always good. I've seen especially like support teams, they really like frequent updates. They really want to know what's going on, and even if it's no update, like it's usually helpful for someone to at least hear that it's the same status.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And sometimes we do that. I think it kind of depends on what's going on. Like, for example, we might have something where it's like, hey, we need to run this job to fix something, and we estimate it's going to take like 2 hours. We might provide a update 30 minutes later and be like, hey, it's still progressing. Estimated time is like 1.5 hours, something like that. But you're totally right. Yeah, over communication is better than lack of communication for sure. Once an incident's been resolved, or like the mitigation has begun, and we let it sit for a little bit to make sure that like mitigation has truly been completed, we'll resolve an incident. And resolving an incident does a couple things. It'll send some communication out to our customers like, hey, like incident's resolved now. And it will also sort of trigger our post-incident process, which is something that is really important for us because we want to learn from incidents and identify things that we can do to prevent that type of incident from happening again. So the form that sort of takes is we have a post-mortem sort of document that is filled out, and it does a couple things. It gathers data on the incident itself. So like, how long the incident was open for, what services were impacted, what were the ultimate causes. Along with that, it kind of tells a story. We identify sort of the wins, the opportunities that we can learn from an incident, and we explicitly identify something we call repair items. And those repair items are things that we've identified, whether they're small changes or larger initiatives that would prevent that type of incident from happening again. With those, we have automation that will sort of track those, and we categorize them depending on how long we estimate it's going to take to implement that fix. And we have automation that will track that to ensure that those things are being completed within the time that is promised. And there's also reporting, like we have a service catalog that sort of scores the health of a service based off different factors, and repair item completion is one of those factors. So something we definitely care about is making sure that like we're fixing the things that we can and making those improvements to prevent that type of incident from happening again.
Yeah, Kyle, I think that's important. I think, in my experience, teams I think really struggle with actually completing these like action items or opportunities that come out of incidents. It's obviously incidents can be a great learning opportunity, and they kind of reveal a lot of tech debt that you have. And so getting those items on the board is just so important.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes it's definitely tough. A lot of times something that can seem simple and then it turns into something larger. And, we have things to account for that. Like you can change the categorization, but we also look at like, hey, we need to do something larger here. And we have sort of a, what we call like a risk register of like, hey, these are like big things that like, they're going to take coordination between multiple teams to tackle. And those are sort of larger initiatives that kind of fan out depending on the quarter. But those are tracked separately, but we do make sure to like get both, hey, here's the small things, and like, hey, here's like the larger things, that we really need to look at. Sort of the last thing we do with the postmortem process is we have a meeting, like usually weekly. It depends on like our incident rate though. We'll have a weekly meeting where like we pick the most interesting incidents, and as an engineering org have discussions on them and like sort of present them. And ultimately the goal of those is to like spread that knowledge and learning across the organization. And also a lot of really good conversations actually come up, and like new things are identified to fix, whether it's for the impacted services or like other services that from people that are joining the meeting. At first they used to be kind of boring, but like we've made a lot of changes to the format, and like recently there's been a lot of great discussions in these meetings, and we've like really identified some really interesting things. So it's been really exciting to see that sort of progress over the past year. I think that's most of the things that I had to talk about with an incident. One thing I do want to mention, as a user of GitHub, there's a few ways that you can learn more about our incidents. So on the GitHub blog, which is github.blog, we post, I think, a monthly post about like our public availability issues and talk about like, causes and what we're doing to mitigate for the future. We also, and this is something we've started doing over the past couple of months, so we have a status page, githubstatus.com, and you can subscribe on that page to like updates, like text updates or whatever. But something we've been doing recently is for incidents, once public incidents, once they're resolved, within 2 business days, we'll put a summary on like sort of the incident timeline, and it will detail like the causes and what we did to mitigate. So like, I think there's like on the status page, there's like a history where you can look at like all the incidents. And if you click on one of them, the top post will be that summary if one was posted. The last thing is we have a Twitter X page. The user is GitHub status, and you'll see communications come from there as incidents happen and as they're being worked on. And I think that's everything that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I had a question for you, Kyle. So obviously GitHub's a pretty big organization. So I'm assuming that you might not know all the different SMEs, that exist throughout your organization. So like, what does GitHub do to help identify who those people are during an incident?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have like a service catalog that sort of has information on all of our services. And for each service, there's information like who is the team that owns it, who's on call for that service. And then there's direct options to sort of like page the on-call for that service. And then we also have chat ops that let you do that as well.
Cool.
All right. How does GitHub work on an incident where something could possibly be exposed to GitHub Copilot for maybe a secret or a key? That's a good question. I don't know if like we've had something like that with GitHub Copilot. Ultimately, like, let's say, for example, somebody posted a key to GitHub or a key in their repo. It's kind of on you to revoke that and remove it. We do have in Copilot, though, as of recently, you can choose options to not take suggestions from like public repos to sort of mitigate getting code that could be something malicious or like something that you don't expect. Within GitHub, we have practices where like we're pretty diligent about like rotating things and stuff. And like if something is detected, there's a pretty quick process for like, hey, we need to rotate something. I guess hopefully that answers your question. Cool. Any other questions? We have another question coming up here in a second. Okay, if we have an example of an incident where the response was really good or that we were particularly proud of, that's a good question. I don't know if I have one off the top of my head, but usually the ones that are like the best are the ones where like, hey, we had an automated thing trigger and alert us of impact, and we were literally just able to press a button to roll back and impact was mitigated. We've luckily been having more of those lately as we like sort of like expand our alerting and observability. So those are my favorite ones, the ones where like it's very quick and very simple. But we've had some that have been like very long running incidents. And I think the like biggest thing that I see that like is really good is like we've gotten a lot better with like communication, and there's a lot of guidance now for how to craft communication and like best practices. So I'm happy with like how we've improved with like our communication to our users.
Yeah, I got another example of a incident that I'm proud of. So one of the things that I believe regarding incidents, it's a great time for different people to learn things about the system that they wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity otherwise to discover. So at my in a previous role, we had a something happen that affected multiple services, and we didn't really have a good automated way to roll out the fix to all these different services. So really what we did is we had maybe 8 developers on the call. We kind of walked through how to fix it, explained how the system worked and why our fix was going to work, and everybody got the chance to really delve into the environment and the architecture a little bit more. And so that can be a really positive thing.
Oh yeah, those are great. The ones where like I there's some we've had where like, there's only one person who understands how the system works, and like they're on vacation, and the thing breaks, and it's an unfortunate way to learn, but it's great because now more people know how the thing works, and there's like that knowledge can be spread. So again, incidents are a great learning opportunity, like you said. Cool. Any other questions from anybody? All right, I think that's it. Well, thank you, Travis, for co-hosting. Really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for listening and taking the time.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you all.
Have a wonderful day whenever you're listening to this.